Hi there, it's Tim Kelley with another video in our New Paradigm of Business series. The videos we're doing currently are about alternatives to using greed as a motivator to drive business results. So just as a little reminder, the problem with greed is that the research shows that using variable compensation to motivate behavior has a negative effect on performance, except in very, very limited situations. So the question we're seeking to answer is, if we're not going to use greed and money as the source of motivation that drives business performance, what are we going to use instead? Well, this video is about the collaborative company. The last one was about the purpose-driven company. Now, these strategies are not mutually exclusive, but I would suggest that you focus on them one at a time and implement them one at a time. So what is the collaborative company? Well, collaboration is an alternative to the hierarchical way that businesses are typically structured and run. So why is this? Well, the issue with hierarchy, and you may recall this from one of our earlier videos about hierarchy, is that giving people a steady diet of decisions that they did not make and expecting them to implement them whether they like them or not is a fundamentally disengaging activity. So, as a result, hierarchies, especially the larger the hierarchy is, the more pronounced this effect is, tends to reduce people's individual sense of motivation and their individual enjoyment of their work over time. And this feature of hierarchies is enshrined in such popular sayings as, it's good to be king, and my personal favorite, if you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. I like that one. Think about that one for a second. Get a visual there. So, how do we go about reducing this disengaged effect? Oh, by the way, one other very pronounced feature of it is that in a hierarchy, the very structure psychologically stimulates the people at the top to behave parentally towards the people at the bottom. So the people at the top tend to become more autocratic, that is, how can I get the people under me to do what I want them to do? And the people at the bottom tend to become more childlike and victim-y as time goes on. And again, the larger the hierarchy, the more pronounced this effect is. So not surprisingly, the people closer to the top of the hierarchy tend to be more engaged than the people closer to the bottom, because, as previously noted, it's good to be king. So if we want a large organization, or a small one for that matter, to have engaged employees throughout, top to bottom, how can we do this without destroying people's motivation through the way that we give instructions and allocate work? What's often tried, by the way, is people say, well, let's not hierarch, let's not make autocratic decisions, let's collaborate. And what they mean by that is, let's remove the hierarchical structure and see what happens. And the result is very predictable. It's chaos. So, if we want to give people an individual sense of power about their work, which Dan Pink in his work calls autonomy, it's a good word for it, collaboration seems to be the prevailing method in most new paradigm systems. Roughly speaking, there are two ways to implement collaboration in an organization. One is to implement collaborative features on top of the existing hierarchical system. And most companies are doing some form of this currently. If you look around, there are very few companies that are actually doing good old-fashioned autocratic hierarchy, like the military or something like that. Surprisingly, though, military hierarchies tend to be much more high-functioning than company ones, because they understand hierarchy better and implement it closer to the original model. So most companies are using a semi-hybrid collaborative hierarchy in which people try not to give too many autocratic decisions to the people under them, which actually generally creates a lot of lack of organizational clarity. There is a system called the collaborative way that is specifically designed to create collaborative features in a hierarchical system, and no doubt there are others. That's just the one I'm familiar with. So that's one way, is we can take the existing hierarchy and patch it, bolt on collaborative techniques that go into the hierarchical system. My personal favorite, though, is to replace the hierarchical system with a collaborative one. The idea here is not to do away with structure, which is what most people do when they try to collaborate, but to replace the hierarchical structure, the traditional org chart, with a collaborative structure. The problem with this is that most people have no idea what a collaborative structure looks like or how to make it work. But fortunately, there are at least half a dozen systems out there that do precisely this. Now, this is a replacement for the traditional hierarchy, not a feature that you add to a traditional hierarchy. So what are some systems and organizations that use that? Well, for example, one that I'm personally trained and very involved in is the collaborative operating system used by companies like the Bostonian Group. And then another one that I'm also trained in and very fond of is holacracy, which is used by organizations like Zappos. And that one's pretty well tied in with the conscious capitalism crowd. Another one is sociocracy, which don't know how much that's used in business. It tends to be used in collective living situations in my personal limited experience. Also, chaotic structures like Visa. Visa is not operated as a hierarchy. And there's a system called True Collaboration, which was pioneered by Thomas Edison and is used at W.L. Gore. I think this was the system that was originally used at in New Jersey at Edison's labs. And also another one that's fairly well known is the Toyota production line. This is not run hierarchically. What all of these systems share is that they have created an alternative structure to traditional hierarchy that has collaborative features and gives the individual members of the organization much greater authority and autonomy over their own work, and has a collective system that then regulates all of these people doing their work in some meaningful way, so that having all these autonomous people doing their work doesn't create chaos at the organizational level. So that's what happens. And then predictably, what happens as a result of that is that employee engagement and productivity go way up in these systems once people get used to the new system, because at first, of course, they're a little confused because we've been using hierarchy for 5,500 years. So those are the systems I know about. No doubt there are others. In the new paradigm, how will this work? Is there a right answer? No, actually. From everything I can tell, everything I've heard and read and seen, the old paradigm says that hierarchy is the only way groups of people can organize themselves meaningfully because, limiting belief, if one person isn't accountable, nothing will happen. That's our collective limiting belief that business operates under. Proven to be false, but still held by many people. So, in the new paradigm, rather than saying this is the system that we all must use, what will happen instead is organizations will look at sort of a menu, a list of possible organizational structures that are known to work, hierarchy being one of them, very important, and say, okay, given what we're trying to achieve, what results we want, the work that we're going to do, the kind of employees and culture that we have or want to have, which of these various organizational systems is the best fit for our specific application? Which one of these is the best fit? Aha, this one, let's use that one and see how it works. So different organizations would employ different organizational systems in order to solve different business problems. Now, this may still seem a little vague to you. Go ahead and read up on some of those systems I named, and in the future, I will interview people who either created or implement or are currently using in their company some of these alternative systems. Great. Talk to you soon.